Okay. Right, morning, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and see if we can help you guys. Just give you some idea on this massive trade fair audience that you can capture. I'd just like to start just a little bit of a background with One World and how we started in Australia. We first launched in 2003 in a really busy time when trade fairs were really pumping. And our first fair we wanted to go to was the Gift and Homeware Fair in Melbourne, and they had a 3-year waiting list just to get into the fair. There was absolutely no way you could get in. So I ended up buying a little head massaging company of all things, pushed them out and got ourselves a tiny little 4x3 stand. So I have no idea about trade fairs, I don't know how they worked, I don't know what they were about. I actually arrived an hour late for the fair, but I thought it started at 10. It actually started at 9. When I got there, we had put curtains up to sort of create some mystery, and there was 3D. People waited. They could see through the curtains. It was absolutely crazy. So we opened the fair at 10 by mistake. Within 15 minutes, we had sold every single piece of furniture on the stand. Someone gave us their credit card and said, "I'm shipping all of this to Perth." And from then, it just exploded. So there was no way we could get to that many people so quickly other than doing a trade fair. So next year we doubled our stand. Within 5 years, we were the biggest stand at the show. So really, it was quite interesting just our road and how that happened. And trade fairs have certainly changed over the years. So I'll just run through and just explain some of my history and what I find works for fairs and what doesn't at the moment. Okay, so with the trade fairs, So we found that trade fairs in probably 10 years ago were the major part of our business and where we wrote most of the business. And it's certainly now leveled out a bit, where trade fairs become one of the facets you use to grow sales and how to expose your product to a community. But with the trade fairs, there's no real way, or with online or SEO or any of that kind of stuff, you can't really physically get in front of people and get their reactions. And that's the important part about a trade fair. You get that immediate feedback. You get in front of people that you can actually see their reaction. They start to ask you questions. And this is why it's really important too that you actually the key stakeholders in the business go to these fairs. I've seen fairs where, I won't mention names, but they put a whole bunch of pretty models on the stand and they sort of make the stand all look pretty. That really doesn't work. As far as a small business goes or a startup, you need to be on the stand. You need to be not sitting on a chair. You need to be engaging with the customers. They'll be asking you questions. We learn so much at these trade fairs from customers. They'll ask you questions you never thought of. What is that made of? How does that work? What's the delivery times? How do I get that? So it's really important that you, your key managers, everybody's on the stand. Even if it gets boring, sometimes there's waves you have no one for an hour or two. It's just important to be there. With these trade fairs too, it's a bit of a double-edged sword at the moment. Trade fair numbers globally are dropping. So where in the past trade fair numbers were growing, you couldn't get space. There's a 3-year waiting list. That's all changed now. So you can get space now, but pretty much every fair. In saying that, though, I still believe that trade fairs have a very important factor, and you just need to pick the right fair. You need to just make sure where you're exhibiting, who you're exhibiting, your outcomes. I mean, we just did a fair now in Melbourne. It was a 5-day fair. We wrote orders for 100 new customers. We could never possibly have got to those customers. Our reps can't cold call. You just can't get to that many people over a short space of time like that. So look, trade fairs definitely work, but I think they need to be a mix of your marketing and your sales strategy. It can't be in the old days where it was a key factor and that's going to set your company off. It's not going to work like that anymore. It has to just be part of the whole mix. Okay, so the next question is, how do you pick the right trade fair? We've obviously exhibited some of the key fairs in the country, and those work, and we know those work, and we'll continue to do those. But the problem comes when you actually start a new trade fair. We did this one fair, which was the Reed Exhibition, is one of the largest trade fair organizers in the world, launched a pharmacy fair, which they touted as going to be one of the best fairs in the country, and there's hundreds and hundreds of pharmacies, and we were going to, it was going to change the market, and we were going to supply all these hundreds and hundreds of stores. We set up at this fair, spent a lot of money. We thought it was Reed Exhibitions. It was all going to be fantastic. We went to the fair. Over 3 days, we saw 2 customers. The aisles were absolutely empty. The caterers had not had tons and tons of food, ended up giving it to all the exhibitors because there was just absolutely nobody there. It was done at Darling Harbour in Sydney. Everything was right, but the fair was an absolute disaster. So it is really important that you try and get to these fairs first. I always suggest if you're going to do a fair, try and go to the fair the year before the fair's on, if it's not a new fair. Go register for the fair, go have a look at it, look at the busy stands, look at the stands that are doing it right. You'll notice one stand right next to another stand looks the same. It's really busy. Go onto the stands, ask some questions, see what they're doing that the guy right next door is not doing. And also I do small things like go to the restaurants at lunchtime, go and see how many people are actually at the show. You won't always get a feel for it because during the fair they're all in the aisles and you don't actually know the numbers, but at lunchtime everyone wants a break. If the canteen's really busy, it's probably a really good show. So just small little tips like that I think are important. If possible, also try and register for the fair just as a visitor. Try and see it from the other side, see what they're going to go through, see all the pre-fair marketing. They send out a lot of newsletters and stuff heading into a fair. Try and get part of that if you can. That's important. See how it's laid out, see what they do. Read exhibitions, for instance, that they charge probably up to $10,000 to be part of that newsletter that goes out. It goes out to 40,000 people. So that's a great database too, because it's obviously industry related. It's people that would attend, or sometimes they don't attend, but you're still getting some exposure to them. So really, just the trade fair, lots and lots of research is important. Get to that fair, chat to the organisers. I still think it's better to register as a visitor. Don't tell the organisers you're even going. Go and have a walk around, and then once you're at the fair, being there a day or two, go and talk to the organisers, and then start asking them about space and where's the best place to exhibit. Those kind of questions. Just on the topic of space, this is a really interesting issue. Now, I've tried everything. I've tried premium right up front in their faces. I've tried down the back near the restaurants. I've tried in the middle. I've tried on the corners and the main aisles. I'm not convinced that it's worth paying for premium places up front. I think if someone goes to a trade fair, they spent a lot of money, they've flown down there, they've got hotels, they're going to do the entire fair. I think it's far more important to spend that money on actually making your stand look amazing, because they'll walk past you, and if you catch them, wherever they are, they're going to walk every aisle and they're going to walk every stand. So rather spend that money, do an amazing stand, get nicer brochures, do all those kind of things. I find a lot more important than actually just paying the extra premium. It can be up to 25% to just be up at the front or up on a corner. I don't think that makes a difference. So, that's just up to you guys. Again, walking the fair before you go is important, but really just think carefully about paying a premium for something you may not get the benefit for. Just with the trade fair organisers, just be careful on what they tell you to. A lot of them will, like the Reed Gift Fair, sold us into that pharmacy fair. They'll promise you the world and often won't deliver it. They really are salespeople. Just be cautious. Ask questions of how long the exhibitors have been in the fair, or the people that are there have been a long time. Ask them what their new turnover rate is. Ask kind of questions like that. It might catch them off guard. If they don't want to produce the figures, it's probably not a great fair. Something like Reed Exhibitions, Melbourne Trade Fair, most exhibitors have been there 10, 12 years. That's a really good sign of a good fair. If there's a high turn rate, obviously it's not working. The other thing with fairs, your stand. It's really important that your stand doesn't look like everybody else's stand. And this is something over the years, I just can't understand how people, it's such a small cost, but you can really just change a stand by just doing small things. But small things like your floor. Don't use the flooring that they give you, because then you look like you're part of the aisle. It's a small little thing. Go to Spotlight, go to Bunnings, get a rug, get a piece of carpet, get some vinyl flooring, whatever you want. Just put that on your stand. It can be 3x3. It might cost you $100. It'll make a huge difference to your stand. It just won't look like you just kind of fallen part of the aisle or the walkway. So, and the other thing is trade fair equipment. Before a trade fair, the organizers will send you a whole bunch of rental equipment that you can buy. Now that's again another money-making scam. I would suggest don't use that equipment, because then you look like everybody else in your fair. So they'll rent you a chair and a table and those kind of things. Rather go down to IKEA, get something a little bit different. It'll probably cost you less. If you're going to do 2 trade fairs, I guarantee you would have paid off that rental cost within 2 trade fairs, and you're not going to look like every second person at the fair. So just little things that we've picked up over the years that can really just make a difference. The other thing is brochures and little handout cards. We print out little DL cards. for people to take away. Try and make those a bit different, high quality. People are going to, there's catalog collectors who will have bags and bags and bags of cards. So just make it a bit different. Maybe give out a little present, a little sample if you can, something to take away. You've got to stand out because there's going to be a ton of brochures. Most that'll be chucked in the bin. Try and do something a little bit different. Just to the end of the day, you want them to keep your one and not somebody else's. Business cards too. Customers and visitors to the fair always run out of business cards. So make sure you have some sort of way of capturing their cards or capturing their details. I can tell you that we've probably 50% of our people run out of business cards at a trade fair, unbelievably, but they do. So look, that's really important too. So just, I think going on to the next slide, I talk a lot about the lead capturing. You spend a lot of money going to a trade fair, and you've got to have a way to capture those people. They're going to be there for a short space of time. They're very busy. It'll always be in waves as well in a trade fair. So when the doors open, everybody comes in. You might be busy for the first hour and you'll be so busy and then you'll be dead quiet. So if you don't have a way of quickly capturing those leads as they come on the stand, you're going to lose that opportunity and you're wasting your money being at a trade fair. The organizers do hire devices, which sometimes you have to hire. They actually encrypt the badges now so that outside devices can't be used. We have a whole trade fair system that we use, but they've been switching the badges and encrypting them now so you can't actually use your own systems. Therefore, you have to hire it from them, which I think is worthwhile. They then spit you out an Excel document and you put that into your MailChimp, whatever, and you start creating your newsletters. So yeah, I think that obviously capturing those leads is really important. So just make sure you get that done before you get to the fair, especially if there's only one or two of you on the stand. You don't want to lose any opportunities. So once you've done all that, you've got your fair set up, you've got your props and everything, you really need to work out what's the return on your investment on this show. I mean, are you going into the show to write hundreds of thousands of dollars? Are you going to build your brand? Are you going to... No, I've been into fairs where I've been into design fairs where you think it's going to be amazing and you write no business, but 2-3 weeks down the track, you actually get an amazing hotel job or something. And so it pays off. But at the time, it's heartbreaking. You're sitting on the stand, you're not writing any dollars. You go home and think, I've done nothing. So I think what I do now is I go to the trade fairs and speak to the organizers, and they'll tell you this is actually a lead generation fair, or this is where you'll meet a lot of designers, we meet a lot of this. Other times you'll meet retail stores, you'll meet people that are actually really ready to buy. So do a lot of research on that, because you can kill yourself and your whole spirit if you go there and think it's going to be amazing, and it's not that kind of fair. It's not an order writing fair. So yeah, just do a lot of research on that. I think it's probably good to do a mix of both. It's nice to have a fair where you're writing lots of sales, but you also need to do some fairs where you're building your brand, kind of a mix of both. So over the years, we've grown. We were Australia. We grew to a size, and we thought that we're now ready to go internationally. Look, it's a very interesting, tricky landscape, and some things work and some things don't. So we went to New Zealand first, did a few fairs there. That was really, really easy. They were very chilled out. You didn't have to wear safety vests. The setup was all cool. It was really easy. Then we went into New York, and it was a whole different ballgame. You have to work through unions. You have to, it's just all different. So look, internationally, I think it's a whole. I'm happy to answer some questions afterwards if you want to ask me about fairs. Look, that is just something that it's a little bit tricky. I definitely wouldn't put you off it. I think it's a fantastic way to get to the market. We've just done fairs in New York, which we've got some really big stores in the US give us some orders. It's very competitive. You're probably not going to have as big a stand as you would anywhere else in Australia, so you need to make it a big impact type of thing. We also work with the Australian government on a program, Export Marketing Development Grant. Now, that's a fantastic product, and you guys might do a talk on that, or may have had a talk on that. That's really been huge for us so they'll give you up to 40% of your marketing costs. They give you a lump sum payment up front, and that's helped us get into the US. So definitely look at that opportunity, and happy to give you some contacts and leads if you need to for that one. We started, it doesn't apply to New Zealand, but it does apply to any of the other export markets. So certainly you need to have Australian content, and there's a few other requirements, but that's been really good for us. Just for instance, New York, I'll just give you, we did a fair in New York in January this year, and we normally do all our electrical products and things, and we plug them in ourselves, and it's pretty straightforward. When we got over there, we weren't even allowed to pick up a screwdriver. We're not allowed to plug a lamp in ourselves. We couldn't do anything. So another Australian company went over there, had a $14,000 electrical bill just for having people come and plug electricals and stuff in. So just be really, really careful on some of the things. And again, do your research. Try and go to the fair before you go. Talk to some of the exhibitors. Just find out a little bit more about these things, because you can really get caught off guard. We now have everything pre-done, so we just kind of rock up and it's all done, and we just open it up and it's there, so we don't have to use the unions. But yeah, just do a little research on that. Okay, I think really I've covered most of the nitty-gritty stuff of trade fairs and some of our mistakes and things, but happy to answer any of your questions you guys may have. Is anything up and coming, any stand setups, fairs you may be doing?
So if you guys have any questions, please just type it into the box and then we'll just answer them one by one. I just thought I'd kick off with a question though for you, Greg. Staff, how do you, like being the CEO of One World, did you initially go to all the trade shows yourself, and do you still continue to, or how do you manage your staff at the shows?
Okay, I definitely go to every single show now. I went through a patch where I didn't go to the fair, and it was very detrimental to me. So you need to go to the fair. There's no ways you'll talk to that many of your customers in one go, in a great vibe. You absolutely have to go. So I thought I was too good for these shows, whatever it was. It's so bad. You really need to go. And now I'll do everything I can. I fly all over the world and make sure I'm at that fair when it starts. It's so important. So yeah, as far as staffing goes, also numbers is really important. You don't want to you spend so much time, you don't want to be caught. Even if you have to hire some people that just help you take leads and things, it's good to just make sure you've got enough people. I mean, again, the numbers of trade fairs have dropped. We used to have 13 to 14 people on our stand with queues waiting, people to see us. Now we probably have 8 to 10 all the time, just to make sure that we don't lose that opportunity.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I've got a question.
Yes.
So, Greg, you've alluded to how trade fairs are changing, and there's the drop in numbers, and we were talking earlier about how trade fair organisers have opened it up to the household community, which has had a detrimental effect on trade fairs. So where do you see the future of trade fairs, and is that going to change? What's going to happen, and is it going to be something that's important to you in your sales and marketing strategy going forward?
Yeah. I think what we're doing now, we're starting to do more specialist fairs. So we've just signed up for a fair in, this is going to be July next year, called No Vacancy, which is actually just dedicated to the hospitality community. So we're alongside Samsung, we're alongside Dyson. There's a whole tech side where they're actually doing all the electronic door things, and that's a real specialist fair.
Yeah.
So and that's very regulated on who gets in there. So we're starting to become a lot more specialized in what we do. So these big general fairs we're finding are becoming very diluted, and everybody can get into them, and there's no special feel about them anymore. There's no big hype about it. But the tiny fairs are becoming better
because
for us.
they're more targeted.
They are more targeted
To a vertical. Yeah. And so how do you find out about them? So everyone's sitting there listening to this going, great, well, so how do I find out about some of these specialist fairs? So, where do we get that knowledge?
Yeah. We get contacted quite a lot because we've been at a lot of fairs before, so a lot of them approach us now.
Yeah.
Just researching the industry and talking to people in the industry. There's always a couple of key fairs that everybody goes to, and then there'll be a few fairs that are just a bit fringy, and you want to stay away from those ones. If possible, go and visit them. That's still the best way.
And what about taking that leap to go overseas? We talk to a lot of founders who we talk about what their growth plans are. They say, well, we want to work the market here in Australia, and then we want to go overseas. When is the right time to expand overseas, and do you actually need to?
It's a tricky one. I think it's more. I don't know if it's ever the right time. You've got to have a very rock solid business in Australia. Make sure that it's absolutely structured well. Your supply chains have to be good if you're going to go internationally. You're going to have to be able to scale it if you do get those orders. So I don't know. Timing's never right, I think. But look, if you're going to do it and you think there's a possibility, go to those fairs, do the research, see what you're up against. I mean, before I went and exhibited any fairs in America, I traveled for 2 years and did all the fairs around America. and I saw there was an opportunity for us. There wasn't anyone doing what we were doing. So that's important that you've got the gap.
Yes.
If you go there and you're knocking heads with someone that's been there for 10 years or 15 years and you do got the same offering, you're wasting your time. You're never going to get that. You'll never get business.
Yeah.
So.
And what about, you're lucky because you've got a number of SKUs.
Yeah.
What about for a lot of businesses that, and particularly, that we deal with, that have created their own product, and so they've got a narrow product range with only maybe 1 or 2 SKUs.
Yeah.
They're at a trade show and they're at the mercy of the buyers as well as the exhibitors.
Yes.
So they get pushed into a bad spot perhaps because they can't afford to take a really good position, and then because they're not a particularly well-known brand, and I've seen it happen, people come up and say, what sort of deals can you do for me on your product? What would be your advice to those businesses about doing deals with people who aren't looking at big quantities, and it's eroding your margin? I know you can't bank margin, but you've got to cover your costs.
Yeah, I'd be very careful. That happened to us in the beginning. People came in and said, we want to... we stuck to our guns and didn't do that. We felt confident in our brand and confident in our product. The minute you discount it, it's like you're becoming desperate. I mean, I understand if it's a big... Even the bigger companies, I mean, we deal with the David Jones and stuff. We don't really discount it. We feel that we have a strong brand. It's design-led. So be careful. Create an amazing stand, and you'll find they probably won't ask you for. If you act confident, you've got a great looking stand, they're not going to ask you for a discount because they're thinking that there's potential here. Well, you guys are confident, you're going to sell it. Yeah, I'd be very hesitant to discount, especially if you're in the early days.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
if you've priced it right,
because they're coming there not just to buy the product, but to buy the magic.
Create the vibe, create the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously, make sure you've priced it right. If you are overpriced and they're telling you, every second person's telling you that it's too expensive, maybe you have priced it wrong. Check that out, because I mean, you need to know that if it's selling in the market and you're confident and the customers are reordering or their services they're using again and it's growing and it's scaling, don't give discounts. Not just because you're at a trade fair trying to cover your costs.
Great.
Your branding's important.
Yeah. So we have another question from Simone. She said, do you have any thoughts in additional marketing opportunities like sponsoring the water bottle filling stand or getting inserts into a conference bag? In your experience, do people pay attention to these?
Yeah, really good question. Been there, done all of that, had the logo on the floor plan, had the bag. To be honest, no, I don't think it's important. I think you're better off if you've got a small product or something you can give away. I would give that away to the people that are actually coming on your stand. It's hugely expensive at a big fair to put your logos and stuff on there, and even the advertising, which I didn't mention. I used to do massive double-page spreads in each of the trade fair magazines that go out. I've actually reduced that down to a tiny quarter page, which is actually the compulsory, and that's all you have to do. I don't believe there's any return on those things. I've tried small ads, I've tried double pages, I've done massive photo sheets, $15,000 photo sheets just for the ads, and there's no return. And I put the same little quarter page ad and I write the same amount of dollars. So I'll be very, very careful. I think spend the money at the fair. Those newsletters that go out, those are pretty good because they will get people that don't make it to the fair. Spend a little bit of money on those, but
don't get caught in that. Yeah.
Don't get wrapped up in that.
That's their revenue model.
It is.
They're publishers. They're not exhibitors.
And it's hugely expensive. Yeah. A little giveaway works really well for us. And we give away, and it doesn't have to be a product, but we give away little chocolate chip cookies. When we went to America, we actually got the Anzac biscuit recipe. We gave it to a little local baker in Atlanta, and he baked us 500 Anzac cookies. And that was cool for them because they hadn't had an Anzac biscuit, and we gave them an Anzac biscuit with a one more logo on it. And everybody loved that. And they came back the next year asking for the Anzac biscuit. So you can do little things like that. I think are way better than trying to sponsor a water bottle or put us into those bags. They just get chucked away.
We have a question from Matthew. He said, how do you go about follow-up? How frequently? Email, call, etc.?
Okay, we normally wait probably a week or so. I think everybody bombards everybody straight after the fair. So we normally wait a week to 10 days. And then we send out just not an in-your-face kind of email, just a thank you for coming to visit us. Sign up to our sort of MailChimp email kind of link things. We just gradually grow it. Be very careful. I think we've tried it straight after the fair 3 or 4 days, and you get such a massive unsubscribe rate. It's huge. So yeah, just frequently. We probably send out a newsletter every 2 weeks. We used to send one out twice a week, and we found we're getting a lot more unsubscribes. So again, it depends on your industry, but be a little bit careful there. I think people get they get a bit bombarded after a trade fair. They've probably been to 50 stands and they're going to get 50 emails and you can go straight into the trash. So that's probably how we do it now. We just follow up, and the first email is really important too. So make sure we then take our top selling products and we take the best feedback and we say, we had this many people, and just make them buy into all the hype. And sometimes it's a lot of hype. You have to create a little bit of hype, but take the best parts of your fair and sort of show them that.
Okay.
That's how we follow up.
We've got another question from Leo. He said, in the fair, the strategy to get new leads and selling products on site could be a little bit different, I guess. What do you think I should focus on? Assume that I am selling an industrial smart earplug, and how different the strategy would be.
Okay, Leo, to depend what fair you're at again. I mean, if you're at a medical fair or something like that, I don't exactly know what market you're selling into, and who you're pitching to. So if you are you pitching to sort of the industrial? Is it the purchasing buyers, those kind of guys? I don't know if you can give away samples. That sort of thing would be good. But should I focus on selling? Again, I think you could probably be at a selling fair. You probably want to get one of the big, I don't know whether your market is, your mining fairs and things like that, and actually sell. That looks like, I don't think you're really building a brand. You probably want to get out to the market. So I don't know where probably the big mining fairs or wherever that market is. That's where you'd want to be. But I would certainly focus on selling. We focus predominantly on selling now. We do out of our 10 trade fairs, we probably do 1 or 2 that are brand building now, and the rest are actually selling fairs. So we use our SEO and our newsletters and stuff to do the marketing side of it now. Especially a new product, you probably want to be at a trade fair if it's something like that.
Talking about competition, do you get a lot of people coming to your stand who say, look, we'd really like to buy these lamps and we want exclusivity for our area?
Yes.
How do you manage that? And they're only going to buy 12.
Yeah. Exclusivity, very tricky one. We don't generally try to do that. What we try and do is we create a bit of demand in that. So we've got stockers in those certain areas. We trade, if they don't buy that product, or they haven't bought that product within 6 months of us, it becomes back out in the open market. Right. So our existing customers that have bought the product, they get to keep that product for that territory for 6 months. Okay. But after 6 months, we send them an email saying, we haven't heard from you. Are you still interested in ordering these products? If not, it becomes back on the market and their opposition. And it kind of creates demand and gets them to keep stocking the product.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how we control it. You've got to be really careful. Over the years, we've also found that you give exclusivity to one company, and 6 months down the track, they've gone out of business. And you've annoyed the person across the road. And
who could have sold 3 dozen in that time. Yeah. So that's tricky. And that's a lot of work for you, is it?
It is.
To manage that inventory and those retailers with that product.
So we actually do have a software program now that actually runs product by postcode, and we can run that. So if the customer queries it, what you generally find is in our industry, they have different looks and different styles. So we've got 2,500 SKUs. They're buying a certain look, or the other one's buying a certain look. But we have custom written a program that actually looks at postcode and product.
Custom program.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that could be something to look at. You've got to be careful though. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because we've so often found that all the new owner sells and they want to change the look or something, and then you've lost the opportunity. They do all the time. So kind of keep it open, but be fair.
Be fair. I think be fair. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a question from Jamie. When you bring products from overseas to sell on international trade fairs, is there any tax claim from Australia or from overseas?
So when you're selling products, when you bring products to overseas, so are you saying if they're Australian products? If you're working through the export development grant, you can actually claim all your samples back. So you get 40% of all your samples, as long as you don't sell them when you at the overseas fairs. So yes, it's not a tax claim, but it is a concession claim that you can do for overseas samples and products.
Okay. Do we have any more questions at all from anybody? If so, please let us know. Other than that, thank you very much, Greg, for your time today. It was very interesting and awesome to hear, some failures and the success you've had with your business.
Yeah, thanks.
Greg did mention that he would be more than happy to, if you need some contacts or some leads for that program, feel free to email us and we can put you in touch with that. Other than that, we look forward to seeing everybody at the next Talking Shop series. And thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
See you
Ray.
later.